Hey everyone, welcome to the Big Bend Fishing Report. Captain Kenny Mullins, Captain Pat McGriff. We're going to talk about current conditions and what to expect over the next couple of weeks until we go live again. So Pat, how's it been going for you?
Well, we had last trip I had. I shouldn't have been out there, but the guys wanted to try, and we were in 20 knots, and we caught some reds. I was gonna go trout fishing, and I tried about maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, and where I've been catching my fish is about 3 miles offshore. And the crew I had on this boat, I looked at them, I looked at that how rough it was, and I said, nah. So I went red fishing from about half tide. We caught about 15 reds. I had two places I tried to pin up, and it was too rough, and it would pull my pin out of the water. It would pull me, move me. Finally found, I knew that one area had enough rock. If I could get it pinned, I could hold it. And we caught them on bait. It was rough, and it was hard to stand up, and we were 80 feet from the bank. And it was hard to stand up in my Parker. That's how rough it was. It was actually, I think, rougher up there on the bank than it was in 4 foot of water. And it was a southwest, and it was just knocking it down. But we ended up with some nice fish.
Throwing pinfish?
Yeah. And then on the way in, I decided to stop, and I stopped out there in the hole in front of Deacle, and we put three in the boat, including a 20, I think a 20 and a half. So we salvaged the end of the day by catching those. But the day before we had a limit. I had Jason Wayne Hunter from Branford and his girlfriend Laney Reiser, and we had 10 nice trout. We threw back one over. We had a 19. I think we caught about a 20. We had a good mess of fish. Had 10 trout, and I think we had 9 or 10 keeper reds and a couple of puppy reds. And we had a good day the day before. It was slick and beautiful the day before. It was almost too calm. And then the next day it was knocking down 20 plus knots. And I canceled the next 2 days because of the wind. So
yeah, we can't catch a break, can we? Between wind, rain.
The wind has been, normally I love it when it's rough, but I had a crew that, the stability wasn't good. A couple of guys, and it was just wasn't meant to be. But yeah, it's been blowing more this year than I can remember, and we're almost to what, the 15th of May.
Yeah, and
middle of May.
Speaking of it being middle of May, as far as conditions and bait and the fish we're seeing, it's more like middle of April.
Yeah, we're behind. Like I said, those reds being bunched up, that usually happens in March, the end of March, 1st of April, and here we are. That was a week ago. It'll be a week today, Thursday. So yeah, those reds have not been in those places, but they were right on top of the hill in 3 different places. I found.
Yeah, I mean, the red fishing for me has been great. I've mainly been throwing gold spoons at them. Gold spoons, chatterbaits. It's probably the 2 main ones. Some bigger paddle tails, some 5-inch. But for the most part, gold spoons is what I've been throwing. And
right.
They're everywhere right now. I mean, they have moved in with a vengeance.
Right. Well, it's just happened in the last 2 to 3 weeks, or 2 weeks, I'd say. You were on some good fish before that, but you weren't catching them. You just catching that one school, weren't you? Working just that one area.
Well, there were other areas too. I just didn't have to go anywhere else.
Okay.
They weren't at the numbers they are now. I mean, they're we're the big fish are here. Then as far as trout, I mean, we've been getting limits, but it's been, one day we'll catch them on soft plastic, the next day live bait, the next day who knows.
Right. Well, that's what it was for. Don Garner was down with his couple of buddies from Valdosta, and they caught their fish on plastic under a cork one day. The next day they couldn't give it, and they couldn't give a pinfish away. The next day they caught them all on pinfish. caught one or two on plastic, and then the next day they caught most of their better fish bouncing plastic and a few on the live. So they had 3 completely different days in a row. 1, 2, 3. So yeah, it's been strange.
Yeah, it's like one day I ran a group trip. Evan and I ran a trip together, and it was windy. I mean, bad windy. And we tried to stay tucked in, and we caught redfish and caught a handful of trout, but it just wasn't happening. And I seen Evan run out where I wanted to go, but the guys on my boat, they're like, "Hey, we don't want to go out there and get beat up if we can find some fish." So we kept trying. Well, Evan texted me; he was on them, and so I said, "Y'all want to do it? Y'all want to grit through it?" No, we'll stay in here. Evan texted me, "We got 6." I told them, they said, "Yeah, let's go out there." Well, we went out there, and it was calmer than it was in close. And so we got out there, started drifting beside them, and so we were throwing some 5-inch assassins, and we were picking up 1 or 2 here and there, but not like he was. And I said, "What are you throwing?" And he was throwing some paddle tails, white. And I had some. Well, the guy that I had on the boat, he makes his own jigs. And he said, "You know what? I'm gonna try something." He downsized, and it was almost looked like a crappie jig. And he went to catching them.
I'll be dang.
And so made me think that they were eating smaller shrimp out there. But since then, seeing more and more schools of bait fish. It's just what we would normally, like I said, what we normally see mid-April. The bait fish have just rushed in. They flooded in.
Yeah, I pulled up on a spot that you and I fish. Well, it's a community area, and there where I normally catch reds, and I pinned up, and bang, 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 we caught 4 trout in a row, and there was a school of ballyhoo right there. Didn't see any anywhere else that day, but that one little cocket on that point, and we caught bang, 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 and that's all we needed. We had one over. We had to throw back, and those fish have not been doing that. So those trout had followed that bait in there because I have not been catching the trout close.
Right.
And if they're in there, somebody had to tell me about it. I'd love to hear cards and letters if somebody's catching them on top of the hill, because our fish have been 2-3 miles offshore. And I think that's going to dissolve. This water is clearing up. I feel like the salinity's got to be getting back normal. These reds are happy up there on the hill. So, I know they can stand more fresh water than the trout, but I mean, the water's temperature has got to be close to 80 degrees now.
Well, just a few weeks ago, I went back into a creek just trying to get out of the wind, and we catch some redfish. And we were catching trout, keeper trout. Makes no sense.
No.
But I think we're to the point now, probably all those fish, we were probably catching them on their way out. But I feel pretty confident all those fish are pushed out. Still catching some bigger trout in tight, but haven't had the big trout bite like we normally do.
No. And what took the Optimus Club 5-pound fish?
Yep.
And that's small for them. That was May the 4th.
Yep.
So that's indicative that there are not very many big fish out there, or they're not vulnerable. They're not up there where they normally are.
Well, most of the overslots I've been catching have been out.
Right.
They haven't been up on the bars and points like you would typically catch them this time of year.
Right. Well, I wonder about the spawn. You said the day you caught them on the paddle tails that your fish had clear eggs and that were translucent and ready to lay.
Yeah, half of them did, and half of them weren't ready yet.
I hadn't seen that. So, like I said, I wonder, or I suspect these fish are going to spawn deeper just because they're out that far. I don't think they're going to say, "Oh no, we're going to hold our eggs till we get back in." They're going to have to go ahead on this next moon, and I think that's late too. As you said, that everything's a month late. Seeing any trout, normally we see them in April, all of April, and they're ready to go.
Right.
They haven't been. And the fish that I cleaned 2 weeks ago, not 2 weeks ago, a week ago, last week, they were not ready.
Yeah, I thought it was odd that half of those fish that day were ready.
And that's very close to 3 miles offshore where you are.
Yeah.
Where you were.
Yeah. And I told you the trip before that, or a couple trips before that, we went out and tried to get some rock bass, and we were in 10 to 12 feet of water catching slot trout. Didn't catch any rock bass. Come back in 6 feet of water, and we started slaying the rock bass.
Well, you figure that out. You let me know when you figure that
No,
out.
I'm not going to try.
Well, it's been strange. But like I said, I think it's going to start to settle out. Of course, like I say, the dreaded scallop season starts in about 3 weeks from today.
Yep.
So those people can keep that water down there, that clear water. They can have that, and we'll see. I doubt there'll be a scallop found between Piney Point and Keaton. I think it's all going to be south of there, but that's my prediction if anybody cares. But
I'm already seeing a bunch of them. Actually been seeing them since January. They were obviously the bigger leftover ones from last year.
Right.
Brent and we were out there in some very low conditions walking around, and we could have filled 2 buckets in a half-mile walk.
Where were you? South of Keaton?
Yes.
Well, that's what I said. It's probably that's probably where it's going to happen.
So with all this bait moving in, starting to see some big fish roaming.
I had the Freeman, Jacob Freeman.
Mm-hmm.
He catches fiddlers, and he run it. And he said, and he told me about turning a point and down south, and said there were just big trout everywhere. And it's a long way from where I'm fishing to gamble to go down there, especially since he's seeing them on an airboat at night up shallow. But he's not running over a foot of water. But that's the only report I've had of anybody telling me about any big fish spotted real shallow.
Probably the same area where I know they're at, but I can't give that spot away.
Right.
Once we get off camera, I'll tell you.
Well, he just told me that he saw them, and it was way down there. So but I haven't checked it out. I told one boy that we'll sometimes go down there. I said, if you get a chance, but he went home before he went back down there. So I don't know. Well, I think we're going to be changing our bait choice, our color choices. I feel like this clear water, we're going to be, throwing some more natural stuff, probably some
like live pinfish.
Well, I'm throwing that anyway. But what I meant is plastics,
right?
Because I changed over to that green glass minnow P&V by Assassin, and the brown, and then the Wakasaki Elite Shiner, and we caught a lot. We were catching shorts, but we were catching shorts on the live bait anyway. And but we did change color and over the pink and pink ghost and Laguna shrimp. I still caught a few fish on Laguna shrimp, but not like I had been, and that was under cork. So with this clear water, I'm thinking you'll have to dig back in your tackle box and come up with a different color.
Yeah, I've been throwing the Houdini.
That's what I just said a while ago. I think it's going to be Houdini, and croaker shad will probably be good.
Yep, I've thrown croaker shad, watermelon slice. Still been working. Mainly Houdini.
Right.
That's been.
Well, Houdini's an awfully good spring color. It just, I don't know, it always has been, but it's got the basics for clear water in it. I used to throw Calcasieu, but they don't make it anymore. And then we had before the Calcasieu brew, it was, I can't say, Vineyard Eel. Vineyard Eel was very close to Houdini.
Speaking of eels, been catching any cobia?
No, I think I hung one on a jig for a few seconds before he turned and headed to Tampa with my stuff. But I was just bouncing along, and I felt the thump, and I couldn't catch up to him. And then next thing you know, he's going the other way, or he's going 90 degrees off, and I didn't. The hook pulled. I don't know. I didn't see it, but I had a client that said he saw something brown following his trout in, and I was netting the young lady's fish, so I didn't see it. It was probably a cobia following his hook fish, but he didn't come to the boat and hang around. So
we hooked one. We hooked one about, I guess it's about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. A guy was bringing in a sea bass, and it ate it, and he tried to horse it, and lost it. But I haven't been out there targeting him either.
No.
You know, I've been pretty busy. I've been on the road, going to some seminars and stuff, and fishing in between there. But
right. Yep, I knew you were gone. The cobia though should be this moon. The May moon should see them pairing up and getting a lot more aggressive. They usually just show up in April, and so this is, like you said, this is like June's going to be the new May.
Yep.
This year, so I think we'll see them pairing up and following a lot more hooked up fish.
The only concern I have is, is this spring bite that we're seeing now, this late, is it going to trickle out and last, or are we going to just light switch go into summer? That's going to be the question.
I'd have to say from the last 3 years, it's going to light switch go to summer.
That's what we were talking about today on the radio show. Joel and I, the last couple of years, it's been, just getting warm in February, then cold front, then March it get warm and then get cold, then April get warm, get cold, and it's just all over the place. And then we, like right now, we get a good consistent spring bait pushing in, and bam, water temperature skyrocket.
Right. That water temperature hitting 80. See, it was 90. It was 92 in our barn today in the shade, on that thermometer in there. And, that means it's 90, 95, 96 out in the sun. So it doesn't take long to jump into the 80s. Will jump if it runs 90 something degrees between now and the 1st of June. So
yeah, and we've had a lot of rain, but I don't think we've had enough in the Keaton Beach area. I don't think it'll impact that water temperature or color clarity as much as it has in Alcilla.
Right.
Like Joel was saying today, Alcilla is dirty, it's dark. They had, I think he said, 5.5 inches of rain, and then of course all the way up Georgia, all the way to Atlanta. There was a lot of rain. All that's going to come down.
Right.
You're looking at probably 2 weeks of.
Yep. Percolating.
Yep.
Yeah, that water's going to be coming out of the ground. I don't know whether it's going to go dark like it did before, because we hadn't had the blowing storms mixed in with it.
No, but it probably will also parts of St. Mark's area, Ecofino.
Right.
But probably that Finn Holloway down is going to, I feel it's going to stay clear.
Right. The question though again becomes, if that water stays dark, are we going to continue to lose that grass? We need that water to clear up so that grass can start to come back in. Those roots aren't dead, but the grass is gone. A lot of grass is gone from Warrior Marker to Big Spring Creek.
Yep.
It's I don't know what it is. I hadn't been north of there. I don't know how bad it is from Rock Island back down to, say, the troughs at Finn Holloway. I hadn't.
There's grass there.
That grass area up there, being above Finn Holloway. Of course, Finn Holloway doesn't have any color anymore, and doesn't have 1 million gallons of water per hour anymore. So I know that fishery's changing up there, but I think it would be to the good on the flats. I don't know. It probably hurt some of the creek fishing, but
yeah, this winter was definitely different than it was. Yeah, A-Man just said there's grass out around Finn Holloway, and and there has been. I mean, let me go ahead and put that up. Even the other side of Rock Island, there's still plenty of grass there. I haven't fished there in a while, but I know there's fish there. I mean, there always is.
Grass or fish? You said fish.
Both.
Okay.
Both. So we're getting to that time of year. Let's see, May. Certain areas of or certain parts of our region, you're going to start seeing the triple tail, cobia. We're not far from the offshore season. Your snapper, grouper, kingfish, all that. But we're gonna let's see. Hey man, so with some clear spots out a ways off the hill. If he would have been late to the show, he'd have known that,
right? Excuse me.
But yeah, so I was saying earlier we're late getting this month's report in because I've been on the road. But so it would be probably 2 weeks. We'll have another report, so we'll be able to give more information going into June. Fishing and scalloping, we'll do a scalloping report and tips then.
Well, the keys to success would be try to find some bait. If you're stubborn enough to stay inside of 4 feet of water, you better be on bait. You need to see some bait, or you need to move. And you're just beating your head against the wall to try to throw gulp and corks out there where there's nothing but shorts. You're just killing short fish. You're not accomplishing anything. You need to get out there on the breaks, fish the troughs, the trenches, the breaks, meaning it changes quickly. Across, say, 100 yards, you have 2 foot of break, 2 foot of depth change. That's a significant amount on our flats. People are trying to fish the way they've been fishing traditionally, and they're just catching and killing a lot of short trout. We got a late spawn last year, and so we got a lot of little fish out there. And we need to protect them best we can, and don't just keep doing the same thing.
If I'm in the shorts, I'm moving.
Upgrade your plastic, upgrade the size of your gulp. You don't have to buy the 3-inch. You can buy the 4-inch, and you can buy the jerk sheds, and upgrade it. Stay with the same colors. Buy your 2 or 3 sets. Buy your 3-inch, 4-inch, and your jerk shed in your 3 favorite colors. That's 9 bags of bait. I'm not asking you to spend $1,000, and you may learn something in the meantime, but staying with the same thing over and over and saying we caught a lot of shorts. Well, that's what gulp generally attracts, is shorts. That's why you and I and most guides fish plastic over gulp, because even we cannot afford to buy 400 bags of gulp at the prices that it is, and yet you can buy the plastic and have 6, 8, 10 favorite colors and have it in 3 or 4 profiles.
Right.
And that's the way we make our living. But people don't understand that, you got to spend a little money to find out which color's better. I can traditionally beat someone gets on my boat with gulp because I will tune into the right color that the larger fish are after faster than they can take the, little fish off of their gulp. I'm not against gulp. I just know that it kills a lot of fish. Because it attracts pinfish, and then the little trout come over there and get excited and grab the gulp, as a bait and switch, because they can't catch a pinfish. It doesn't attract trout, it attracts pinfish. So you need to learn that lesson if you don't understand it. Those bites are not trout. Most of what you're getting is pinfish biting that gulp.
Yep, and you can see it. They just take out little.
Right. And like I said, it's gotten pretty expensive. I mean, it's $6, $7 a bag. So, if it were me, I'd rather buy 2 bags of plastic or 3 bags of plastic instead of 2 bags of gulp, and learn to fish. A screw lock jig head is something people miss the point. I don't know. I used to teach at my seminars, and I was shocked at how many good anglers that I knew that would attend my seminars really didn't fish a screw lock or spring lock, whatever you call jig head. Of course, I use Assassins, and I'm now using some of Bert Diener and Waycross builds a lighter jig head that I'm using, a little tiny 1/16. It's a true 1/16. But if it didn't have the screw lock feature on it, I couldn't fish it because it has a very light wire, Gamakatsu, almost like a crappie size wire, and that would tear through anybody's plastic quicker. And if you use a spring lock, a screw lock, you can fish 3, 4, 5 fish per bait instead of 1 or 2. If you're cheap and you buy cheap jig heads, you're going to go through a lot of plastic. That's why a lot of people use Gulp. And I know Z-Man, the last tech, people like to fish it, but it still gets cut up.
Especially with these puffer fish.
Right. And, you know, the spring lock again or screw lock jig head on the Elastec is hard to do, but once you get it on there, it's there. But I've been using them for so many years, I've forgotten what a regular jig head looks like. I just don't fish the regular ones.
And one thing I do, if I'm going to use it on the Elastec type bait, is take the hook, the point of the hook, and feed it through that bait and create a hole, a starting point, and it makes it easier to twist it on there.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that trick. But I don't think I've used. Somebody brought me some Z-Man on a trip that they were down for 2 or 3 days with me, and I fished it on the thing. But like I said, I don't use it, and I keep Assassin on the boat.
Yeah.
But you had the guys that own Z-Man fish with you, and you said they fish their baits and other baits. So that's
mostly hard baits.
That's a pretty good indication that you know, you got to be versatile, and you can't get stuck on one thing.
That's right.
It's I used to tell people, don't hang the lure on your line back home in Macon or Tifton or Thomasville and then drive down and fish with it because you put it on in the driveway back home. You know, don't make the decision. Let the fish make the decision.
That's right.
You know, how many casts do you make before you change? On average.
Handful.
Yeah, I try to go 5 casts and then I change. If I don't get at least a pinfish to peck at it, somebody's got to swing at it.
Yeah. And
I'm going to find a color that at least the pinfish are swinging at it and then go from there, or shape-wise. But, you know, I'm if I have somebody on the boat that really wants to play, I tell them, you know, don't waste your time. 5 casts and change color. And then, you know, go from there.
So we have a few comments coming in. Brandon Davis said, I have a boatload of Gulp and don't use it. I can't stand it.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of it, but I do have some on the boat because there are times that's what they want. It works. But
well, in the winter, it's a little more preferable for reds and flounder. I recommend it for flounder fishing, but I wouldn't recommend it for anything other than redfish or flounder in cold water.
And Mike King says big trout at Shell Point, grass flats, flounder also.
Well, that's nice to hear, but what, when, where, and why? You got to give me something else. Who's that?
Mike King.
A little something else, Mike. Live, dead, synthetic, 5 feet, 25 feet. Give me something. Or give those people something.
Terry Griggs says, I will be down Sunday to Wednesday next week. What do I need to fish with? Pinfish.
Yes. Pinfish, cut bait. Don't make your mind up before, but have something white on the boat, something chartreuse on the boat, and something pink on the boat. If you start with those 3 colors, you're probably going to find some kind of bite going on.
And natural.
And then you can refine it. Yeah, get you something that looks something like baby bass, Houdini, croaker shad, something with the green red in it, like your slice. Yeah. The watermelon, something with the watermelon back. There's about 6 colors that Kenny and I use from Assassin that are of that persuasion. You've got chicken on a chain, which has the chartreuse red back. I mean, watermelon red, and then you got watermelon slice. You got watermelon red, just plain, and then you got what's the other one
Um,
that has a different color base. But anyway, those colors are going to catch fish in clear water. Don't think it. Don't overthink it. Just throw something natural that actually looks like a little fish in the water. If you can see the bottom where you're fishing all around the boat, then the fish are not going to need a bright fluorescent bait.
no, that's
If
what I'm throwing. Most of that Houdini, the croaker shad, like you said earlier.
and these colors, these colors are pretty simple. They're the same colors that you'd throw if you were bass fishing in clear water. That's why they're effective. They Something about the watermelon green just looks like a fish, looks more natural to them, and looks like the bait fish, whether you're in fresh or salt water.
Yep.
I bet Kenny's got more watermelon slice than he's got anything else.
Oh yeah.
Once you locked on it, what, 2 years ago?
About 2 years ago.
Or 2.5, something like that. And I've heard that some of the Steinhatchee boys in the airboats, that's all they throw. Or at least in the fall. In the winter, that's just when they fish mostly.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I mean,
Thanksgiving to Valentine's Day.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I've thrown the Zoom watermelon red, I've thrown the Assassin watermelon red, and most of the time I will catch 3 to 1 on watermelon slice. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just that more green back.
Right.
Maybe it's less red. I don't know.
It seems to have less profile in the water because of the slice part of it is lighter. So I think they see it as a smaller bait, which is more susceptible, and I think they're more aggressive to hit it. When I've had the days, like you said, where they were really wanting it on the 5-inch, like I said, it was no contest. That's what they wanted.
Yep.
I've got them, but I hadn't thrown the P&V. You throwing that little P&V in it?
I did in February and March.
Right.
I haven't thrown it much since then.
Right.
Not because I don't know. I just haven't.
You hadn't needed a smaller profile.
Right.
Well, I've caught them with the cork in the P&V when they would not hit the 5-inch under the cork. So it's
and I told you, I think before we got started, I had someone on the boat that makes their own jigs, and for typically fishing in Louisiana, but they were smaller profile jig. I mean, very small.
The jig head or the plastic was small?
Both.
Okay.
And so we weren't catching. We're struggling. He switched to that, and it was bam, slot trout. Well, dang, something to this. So then I went to instead of the 5-inch jerk shad, I went to a 3-inch, and was having the same results. And he was using the cork. I was bouncing them, same results, but went to that smaller profile. But the day before, we were catching them on 5-inch, in the same area.
Right. Well, like I said, when the light changes, you have to change. You got the difference in the light according to which way the wind's blowing, how hard it's blowing, and if it's blowing with or without against the tide. All those things factor in the amount of light that's available.
And honestly, I don't carry a ton of tackle.
I do. I carry a half a ton.
That's what I was saying. Like you, I don't carry a ton. I mean, I've got maybe.
That's from my bass days. I can't stop myself. Nothing I hate worse than them hitting one and I've got one bag of them. Yeah. If they go to hitting a color and I've got one bag, it just pisses me off.
I carry about 6 to 8 colors on average.
Great plan.
And honestly, I
plan to do that. Well, you can't fish but so much, but when I had a day. It's been 4 years ago. And I called you I got you on the text and said Stinky Pink. We used 7 bags of Stinky Pink between me and one boy. That's how many trout we caught. I don't know how many we caught that day, but he said we caught 60 something. And to count them, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Most people think they have had 100 trout a day when they've caught 50 trout. But 100 trout, if you catch one every 2 minutes, if there's 3 people, let's say, and you said you caught 100 trout, and you catch one every 2 minutes, that's 200 minutes, and that's 3.5 hours. And I've never caught a fish every cast for 3.5 hours. And that's every cast. Somebody's got to get.
The only time I've done that is when they're just stacked up in a creek in the wintertime.
Well, I've done it on the flats, but they weren't keepers, and I've had it every cast, but not for 3.5 hours.
Right. So Jason Richmond, I'm going to come back to yours since we have another question here on the topic we're speaking on. Terry Grigg said, I fished with Kenny about a month ago. I learned a lot from him. Who makes watermelon slice? I have the gold spoons now because of Kenny. Saltwater Assassin makes the watermelon slice.
Watermelon slice. In the 5-inch in the P&V. And I'm not sure if they make it in the Sea Shed. Do you have it in the Sea Shed? I don't.
No, I really don't use Sea Shed as much as I used to.
Right.
Probably for the last 2.5 years, I really haven't thrown Sea Shed. I don't know why. I guess because the 5-inch has been working. I still have them. I just haven't thrown them.
I throw them when it's calm, and when it's calm and clear, I'll back down. But normally I throw the 5-inch until I can't catch a fish.
And then Mike King says, back to Shell Point, 4 to 6 foot popping cork.
There you go, Mike. Thank you.
He likes pink slime gulp, trout, jig. A big color in our area is white with chartreuse tail gulp.
There you go.
And Brandon Davis says coconut ice and around 4 to 5 feet under a cork seemed to do the trick for my clients last week.
Coconut ice, never heard of
that. I'm not sure what coconut ice is.
I've heard of white ice. Isn't that a Zoom color? White ice.
Mm-hmm. And then
I've never heard of coconut. It sounds like a Z-Man though. Well, it might be it's gold color. I don't know. Y'all look it up at home. Y'all got nothing to do.
So Jason Richmond said, how is scallop season looking up near you, Kenny? The scallop population is thriving. It is looking really good. Brandon Davis said, oh, okay, made by a man. He meant Z-Man.
Kenny's going to have to come up with an awful lot of scallops the way he's bragging already, and it isn't even seasoned. We can tell you this, that it's going to be crowded.
Yeah, I mean, they're here, especially Steinhatchee South.
Right.
Unless you call me, we may not go there. But let's see. Yeah, and so I know, but I'm asking for them. What depth have you primarily been fishing lately?
Well, if I'm bouncing my plastic, I'm trying to stay in 6 and 7, and even 7 plus, but not 8 feet. And it seems like when I come out of 6 and get into 5, I start catching shorts.
Yep.
And if I'm throwing the live, I'm trying to do the same thing on a flat, on these offshore flats. I'm trying to start off the edges and be pushed in and up onto the flats. And you're not going. The bigger the flat, the less fish in the middle of it. You don't have as rush of current. You don't have the pinch going on as much. It's that flush of current going on when that water rushes up and onto the flat that seems to be oxygenating, and that's where when you have a bite for the day, it's going to start on one of those edges. And I've moved around a lot because there was a lot more boat traffic up there than I suspected the last couple of times I was up there. And it hadn't been a spot. It's been playing the break from 7 up to 5, 5.5. And
every day it's been just a little, you got to bounce around.
Yeah, they're moving. And I think that's because there's not a lot of bait out there. I think the shrimp are here today, gone tomorrow. That's something going on with them that we're not aware of until we've cleaned fish. We won't unless they spit a shrimp up, and I hadn't seen a lot of that. It's a little late now for that, but it could still happen. But the main thing is, if you're throwing a cork, don't be afraid to fish 6-7 foot.
Right.
You can run a 40. You can lengthen your leaders. I don't. I leave my leader at about 30. It's usually around 36. It might be 32 one night and 36 the next day. But whatever I tie up for the evening is generally supposedly coming out at 34, 36 inches. Remember, it's a small baby's butt to ask a trout to come 3 feet and get a live fish. You might have to put a longer leader on if you're throwing plastic. Friends of mine from Sylvester used to call it B52. Cal Beanblossom used to say he's B52, and he was running a 52-inch leader under his Cajun to his plastic and catching trout where he couldn't get them to come up to a 3-foot leader. Now, you better be a good fisherman. I didn't tell you to put a 52-inch leader on. I said he did. You can hook yourself in the back of the head if you're not careful. You've got to have a rod close to 8 feet to do that, at least minimum 7.5 feet, and you got to know how to throw it and be careful. But don't worry about changing leaders on live bait. Change them on plastic, and throw something that's manageable. It's better to make a 90-foot cast than it is to throw a 42-inch leader 40 feet. If you can't throw it out there, don't rig it up.
And at that point, as far as plastics, you're probably better off bouncing or throwing a drop shot rig, or
Well, I would agree and disagree with you, Kenny. I would say that it's 50-50. You can't make that decision. The fish need to.
Right.
Have it rigged to throw it. Give it equal time. Either count the cast or count the minutes and bounce, or that, and say I'm going to change 3 colors and I'm going to fish 10 casts per color, and then make the same number of casts with the cork and let the fish tell you what they want. There are days where I pull out a cork and I 3-to-1 what I can do with bouncing. We're going to move away as the water hits 80. Those shrimp are going to go on out there deeper than 6-7 feet, and the bouncing is not going to be as good. So you're going to be reliant on the edge of that flat as opposed to fish chasing a shrimp. They're going to be fish eaters. So you throw your jerk sheds and your fluke shapes, and nothing wrong with the cork. I can catch fish on a cork all summer.
Oh, I agree, but
yeah,
I'm saying the average person that can't throw that 5-6 foot leader on a cork is probably going to be better off finding an alternative, which would
be there's 99% of the time there's more than one person on the boat. So what do you think you ought to do? One of you ought to throw the cork, and one of you ought to bounce.
Yep.
And whoever likes the one, prefers one, let that one do that, and let that compare it.
But I can tell you, most time I'm not going to put a 5-6 foot leader on a cork with clients on the boat.
Oh no,
someone's going to get hooked.
No, I'm not either. But I told them, if they're that quality of angler and they have that equipment, that there's nothing, that the trout may not be tricked by the amount of light, say in the top 3 feet. If the water's clear, he may say, "Oh, that's not that." But if you dropped it down and he didn't have as much light, he might hit it. And I've seen that occur many times. The best thing to do is change color and come up with a color that's believable at that depth, which would be a clear base or a smoke base or that light watermelon green base. We mean the main plastic, and less glitter or no glitter. Go to something more natural, and you fool that fish. A clear, Tom Mann used to make a clear damn shrimp tail. His was the stingray grub, and I killed trout on it in the winter. I didn't come down here in January. Back then, I came down here in November, and it was a clear, and they'd eat it. The trout would eat it. I don't see them much anymore.
Well, that's something you don't hear people talk about a lot anymore around here, is the DOA shrimp, and DOA has that clear with the red glitter in it.
Measles is what they call it. It was their number 3 seller. Number 2 seller for 30 years. That was Mark Nichols. His number 1 was Glow. His measles number 2, and clear gold was number 3.
Yep.
And I've forgotten that to talk about that Assassin's gold glow.
Oh yeah,
that gold glow was catching me a lot of fish.
Yeah, well, you and I, when we went over there, said that's right when they came out with it, and we grabbed it up, and I'm already out. I got to go get some more.
Right, the 5-inch. I caught fish in the middle of the day, bright sun, clear water. Corks in the rods in the holder because I'd be netting the customer's fish. Look up and the cork was gone. pull in a keeper fish that hit it while it was bobbing underneath the waves. You don't get much better color than that.
Yeah. I wasn't sure how it was going to do at first. I was thinking.
But you're like me. Anything with gold in it, you'll try it.
Oh, yeah. And it's great.
Yeah. And that's going to be a good color. Remember, too, that a glow bait doesn't work unless the sun's shining. People think, oh, well, I need to throw glow because it's overcast. No, if it's not overcast, you can't charge your glow, and it won't glow it won't glow unless it's got sunlight and you see your shadow. If you don't see your shadow.
And honestly, that bait has been working even on cloudy days. It's just a good.
Well, it's got what it needs. It's got gold in it and glow. Yeah. Those are two of the top selling DOA shrimp colors for years.
Yeah, and I don't know why DOA is not more popular here. You go other places and it's
money. You're throwing $3 a bait, $2.50, $3 a bait, and we've got blues and Spanish out the Batuta. And the blues and Spanish will love to hit a DOA under a cage.
That's true.
But now I've taken it. The way to fish it, if you want to fish a DOA, pull the nickel hook that Mark Nichols puts in it out and throw it away. Get you a bronze, I believe it's called, I've forgotten the number now, but it's a short shank live bait hook, kind of like we nose hook with, and tie that on there and just hook in through the nose. Take the weight out of it and cut it in half, and either throw the two pieces in the water or use half of it, but put it under that cage and then let it slowly drop back down. Oh, it can be a killer. It can be a killer bait.
Something I do in the summertime, we talk about nose hooking in the winter, and that slow descent.
Right.
I do that in the summer sometimes.
Right. But with
a popping cork on that clear water with the longer leader and just, you're going to pop and just let it sit, 10, 12 seconds and just slowly just flutter.
They'll hit it while it's dropping.
Yep.
They'll hit it while it's dropping and you're not even fishing it. The person that does the least most wins when you're fishing that nose hook.
Yep.
It's hard to teach that, though. It's hard to convert a bass fisherman into throwing that or working it correctly.
But we get a lot of bass fishermen from Georgia.
Be careful now. I'm from Georgia.
I know. And bass fishermen, they'll play the leader game, where they'll downsize their leaders and for different descent rates or upsize their leaders or even material leader from fluorocarbon to monofilament, and maybe they may have a 20-pound main line and throwing a 10-pound leader, all about the descent rate.
Right.
But when they come here, they don't do that.
Well, their vision is the shallow water is what fools them. And they think that because they're in shallow water, all they have to do is put a bait in front of the fish and get reaction strikes. And it's not a bad idea. It's just wrong. And, it makes sense that mistake is made. But the only time that works is when you pull out a Zara spook and you just throw it and work it and throw it and work it. And if your arm will do that and you're 20-something years old, have a big time. But when you get my age, you're not going to throw after reaction strikes all day. You're going to have to get a convincing strike in a small area and get that fish to come and get you and go. And what we don't realize is how many fish are looking at our baits that don't hit them. And that's not so when you're in a pond. The bass comes over, sees it, and he goes and gets it because he's not afraid. He's the apex predator. The trout is not. And people don't realize that they can't fish the whole cast like they do for bass. That trout's not going to chase that bait down to the boat like a bass will. So,
well, I tell you this, you really want to learn something about colors, go do some live scope fishing where you can actually see the fish come up to the lure and turn away from it, and then you switch color, and that same fish that turned away from what you had eats it.
Right. The crappie boys have told me about that. Some of my friends that crappie fish said it's amazing. But I call it video fishing. It's not fishing.
It's so I was just up there in the crappie capital in
Mississippi,
Enid, Grenada, Sardis, and we actually went live scope fishing on Sardis. And there's some giants there.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, everyone thinks that live scope's cheating. You can't make them eat. You can see them, but you can't always make them eat.
Yeah, but you take the mystery out of when you're going to get bit. And I'm there for this. I'm there for the surprise. I'm not there for the convert them. I don't want to convert a church full of people into a new religion. I want them to come in, bite my hook, and I'll not know it.
Well, I honestly think that day we'd have been better off without it.
So you spent too much time looking at it, and not looking for new water.
Yeah, because we got on a lot of nice fish that just would not eat. But I tell you something that I did learn. You know, every time I go somewhere and we go on a trip, I learn something. And you know, out here trout fishing, sometimes I'll use a clicker to keep track of my numbers because I can't always remember.
Right.
My friend that's a guide up there, we got on the boat with him. He handed us a necklace, and it was paracord necklace with beads on it, and it had 15 beads on each necklace because that was the limit. So when you get one, you put it in the box, you slide a bead down or slide a bead up, whichever way you want to do it, and you slide a bead. Keep track of your fish. So
some of my customers can't count to 15, Jimmy.
Well, they won't have to because there's only 5 trout.
They got to count to 5. That's right. You going to make an abacus then on a string? Is that what you're saying? I never heard of that one.
Yeah, because I'll use those clickers sometimes, and the saltwater just eats them up.
I've never used a clicker. I go back and look in the cooler and count them. I have a running count in my mind, and
yeah, I don't have a memory like that.
When I get close, I go check, and I miss it sometimes. I come in with one short and get kidded for it, especially if we threw back number 10 or number 15, 10 or 15 times. It's a little easier now that they took our fish away because we don't have to go as high in the cooler. but you know, I hate that, but that's true. But anyway, that's if we were crappie fishing or something like that, that makes good sense. If you could have 15 fish per person, then there's no way he could keep up with it.
Yeah, especially I can't keep up with the trout.
Well, if he had 3 people fishing, that's 45 is a lot. A lot of numbers, and he's going to have doubles and triples all the time.
Yep.
Were you spider rig fishing or what?
No, just a single rod with live scope. And we'd have probably been better off spider rig. It was one of those days. But, you know, last year we live scope fish, and even with live minnows, you'd see some of them come up and they just turn away from it. Then you grab it. We were rigging them on jig heads. Well, you say you had a chartreuse jig head. You switch to a pink with that same minnow, they come up and eat it.
Right.
Or they wouldn't eat the live, and then you switch over to just a artificial jig, hand tied, and
Bingo.
Start. Yeah. So it's no different out here with the trout and redfish, and you got to give them what they want.
Right. And you got to let them make the decision. You can't make it.
So Ronald Hignan said, need to get you some of those Hookin' Dreams jig heads to go with them. I'm not sure what the Hookin' Dream.
Nope.
Something else for y'all to research.
I would dream then hook, not hook and dream. Then hook.
But yeah, so.
Well, I cut my teeth on crappie fishing. I was catching crappie from the time I could walk, but we fished with corks and minnows under the lights at Lake Sinclair, and I learned a lot about cork fishing then. But also if you had it, my mother would make you hold your cane pole up and move her cork if you caught one before she did, and you have to move and set hers exactly where yours was depth wise. And then if you caught another one, she'd take your pole away from you and make you fish with hers, because she didn't believe that Daddy and I had enough sense to tie them up the same.
So I've got a report for you freshwater fishermen in the Big Bend area. Lake Talquin, the crappie bite is on in about the 10 to 12 foot of water. So if you're looking for those, that Talquin's a good place to look. The brim are on bed, and Seminole, the water's clear in Talcott. This is from Captain Paul Tyre, by the way. And so he said Lake Seminole, the bass is on fire. The water's dirty because of all the rain and coming down. But he said if you're looking for bass, find the brim beds, fish the brim beds for bass right now. So there's some good freshwater tips for you for Talcott and Seminole. Terry Griggs said, you may have already said it, but what depth are trout at? They're somewhere between the top and the bottom. No.
5 to 7, you're better off than fishing shallower. And it's okay to let it drift on up, but don't stay less than 5 very long unless you're catching fish. Unless
you're in them. If you get up there, like you said earlier, if you get inside that 5 and you start catching those shorts, get out of there.
Right. They're not going to suddenly become keepers. The shorts are more aggressive on the cork and grub in 5.5, 5 foot. And I even had a day where I caught catfish on bouncing plastic. Every time I broke 5, I caught 3 in a row at the end of the drift. And I say, well, it's time to go. And I don't know what was going on that day, but the sail cats were eating my grub when I got too shallow.
I tell you, our trip has turned my boys into cat fishermen.
They're impressed, huh? With the size of fish you were talking about, I don't blame.
Oh, we were catching some giant flatheads and blues. It was we had a good time. We were on the Alabama River, and we caught a couple of 25-pound flatheads, some blues that were right there in the 20-pound range. And then we went to Mississippi the next weekend, and we rented an Airbnb. It had a private pond on it. And I was at a dog seminar testing some dogs, some blood trailing dogs. Anyways, the boys stayed back at the Airbnb, and I just got them some light rigs because it said that the pond had some brim, bass, crappie, and catfish. So I said, well, I'll just go get them some lightweight rods, 6-pound test, and they're sending me pictures of 30, 40-pound blue cats.
40 pounds. Good God Almighty.
On 6-pound test line. And so Dakota ended up Hunter caught the biggest one, and Dakota had to get in the water and wrestle this thing to be able to get it out, because obviously you're with a 1,000 reel with 6-pound test, you're not
gonna bring him to the bank.
Yeah.
No. Absolutely not. That's amazing.
I tell you, up there, noodling is a big thing. They call it grabbing.
I know what it is.
And
I ain't gonna noodle.
No, I'm not gonna do that.
I wouldn't do that when I was younger, much less now. I'm not gonna reach my arm inside of a hole on the side of the riverbank and hope it's not a moccasin.
Brandon Davis just sent me a picture. Cell cat on plastic. There you go. You want a good sail cat charter. But if you can stand the slime, sail cats are delicious. We learned that last year.
Not gonna put them in my cooler.
Jason Johnson says, "Hi guys from Cherry Lake." I was wondering when Jason was going to get on. He normally doesn't miss one. But all right, guys. Well, we're nearing the hour mark. If y'all have any last minute questions, let us know. In the meantime, we want to thank Stephanie with Keaton Beach Vacation Rentals. We are actually live right now from her store, the Keaton Beach Trading Post. Scallop season's coming up. I'm sure Stephanie, most of her houses are booked up, or booking up fast. So if you want something, you need to get a hold of her sooner than later.
Yesterday.
She does have some campsites available for some campers. So reach out to her. It's Keaton Beach Vacation Rentals, and she'll get you taken care of. And we appreciate her. And as always, we appreciate Jared with Keaton Beach Bums. If you haven't been there, he has all the tackle you'll need. In fact, anytime I need something, last minute and he doesn't have it, he says, let me know and I'll get it in. I'll go in the next time it's there. So we want to thank them. And Second Wind Hydration. If you're down here and you get dehydrated and you need an IV, reach out to Second Wind Hydration. Next door to the trading post, they have an urgent care if you guys need anything. They'll get you taken care of. So we don't see any last minute questions. So we appreciate everyone for tuning in, and we will be back on in a couple of weeks. Pat, how can they get a hold of you?
Best just call or text me at 850-838-7541 or go to onemorecast.net.
All right. And I'm Kenny Mullins with Real Epic Charters. You can call or text me at 850-838-6101. And then you can find me at realepiccharters.com, KeatonBeachFishing.com, or any of the social media. And we appreciate everyone.